And we're live. So it's another interview with two people at the medical inquest of Derek Dimmock at Southwark Coroner's Court. We're with Darren and Jay Hughes. Thank you both for joining us today. Your father, your brothers, your father, you're saying has experienced a similar Midazolam death. Could you talk us through what your experience has been?
As I explained before, it's a bit long-winded, and I'll sort of get to the point, the relevant bit. My dad's death was sort of like a plane crash, really. And when I say a plane crash, as I've explained when we've been in meeting with the hospital, a plane doesn't crash because of one bad decision. It's normally 5, 6, 7 bad decisions that cause the plane to crash. And it was similar to my dad's sort of demise, really. They'd misdiagnosed a couple of times, ended up letting him out of hospital. Clearly shouldn't have been let out of hospital. Went back into hospital, and again, it was during this period then, during COVID, we weren't going into hospital to keep a check on him. They were sort of more in contact with our Jay over his sort of daily or every couple of hours progression, saying he's doing okay, blah 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 blah. And I'd gone to bed, and our Jay phoned me up and said something's not right. They phoned up and said his dad's took a turn for the worse. So I sort of felt a little bit uneasy about this, and went to hospital and let myself into the ward where he was. When I went into his room, I could immediately see he was severely dehydrated. I pointed this out to the doctor. He said, I'll put a drip in. So why isn't there a drip?
He hadn't done that already?
No. You could see his lips were cracked.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I stayed with my father during the night. He'd been diagnosed with COVID. His breathing was laboured and his oxygen levels were low. Basically, nobody really came to look after him, unless I went to a nurse's station and said, look, can you bring me dad a drink? He was, like I say, severely dehydrated. I must have gone and got him easily 6, 7 cups of orange juice, which he drank.
And he was able to do that himself, was he?
Perfectly, yeah. I mean, when we've had subsequent meetings with Wiston Hospital, and they've said they had a swallow test he couldn't swallow, so well, that's a ridiculous statement. I must have gave him 7, 8 cups of orange juice.
You personally, yes, right? So there's no disputing that.
The nurse brought it.
Yeah.
The nurse would have been there and seen him take the cups.
Yeah.
Anyway, this sort of went on because of the lack of care really through that, it sort of slid down the bed, and as he slid down the bed, obviously with someone who's respiratory is being suppressed, or you could see his oxygen levels going down. He was struggling to breathe because he's sort of hunched more. So my dad was going, Darren, can you lift him up the bed? And I struggled to do this. I had to go and get the nurses. Look, can you lift him up the bed? When you lift him up the bed, his oxygen levels went back up, not to normal, but they went better. This sort of happened through the night. Got to about 8 o'clock in the morning. Doctors came and thought, give me some rest. They'll look after him. I'll go and have a shower and maybe come back in an hour or so and keep my eye on him. Again, they looked after him, lifted him up the bed, looked at his oxygen levels. They were exactly the same as when I'd gone in the night at about 1 o'clock in the morning. So what I'm saying is he'd been up and down all in through the night, but when the doctors came in and looked after him and he was sat up, he'd stopped coughing, breathing was a lot better, but he was back to where he was. He hadn't gone downhill, he was virtually the same. So anyway, I could see the doctors holding his wrist and sort of nodding at the other doctors. There was 3 doctors in total. No, I'm all right. And a nurse. And I could see them nodding like that, and then the nurse went out the room, came back in, and she said quite clearly, "Are you in pain, Robert?" And my dad went, "No." And she put a cannula in his stomach, and my dad went, "Ow, that's my dad's joking."
Yeah.
So I'm like, wondering what's going on. Nothing had been explained to me, or we're going to administer this, or we're doing this, or blah, 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 blah. He started injecting into his stomach. So I said to him, what are you injecting? What are you administering there? He said, it's morphine. I said, morphine? What are you giving him morphine for? He said, it's not like that. It's to slow his heart rate down. And we've been through this with subsequent meetings with the hospital, and even they struggled to explain why he said that. It's, morphine certainly isn't used. Anyway, didn't mention any other drug whatsoever. Literally within 5 minutes, he changed completely. Blacked out, he was unconscious, breathing, he was actually grabbing at the air at one point, like he was hallucinating. And this was literally within a couple of minutes of them administering what they'd administered. I'd seen 3 injections, I saw 3 sessions.
You were told it was only morphine at that stage?
Only morphine at that time. After about 7 or 8 minutes, they took me out of the room and took me into a separate room to tell me my dad was dying. So I'm like, well, you've not mentioned this before, you've not explained what's going on. And I said, well, you've just given him morphine. And he said, again, it's not like that. And what I think he meant by it's not like that, he wasn't on end of life or trying to, I don't know what he meant by that, but I can only think of, well, it's not, it's not an end of life, he's just died naturally. There's nothing to do with what we've just given him.
Yeah.
But again, never mentioned Midazolam. Anyway, I said, listen, I'm going to stop this meeting now because I want to get back with my dad and we might even be dead before I get back in the room. So I'd probably been in the room maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes, went back to the room, saw he's just basically watching dying in front of my eyes. My mum and Jay came in, literally as he drew his last breath. We then stayed with my father for a couple of hours after his death in his room, and the nurse administered the what we thought at the time was just morphine. I said, can you write on a piece of paper
What you've just given him?
what you've just given him? And she put morphine and midazolam and the doses. I said, well, there was actually 3 injections at the same time. The other one was a saline to clear the line, which I sort of believe. That piece of paper we put on side table. That disappeared, that piece of paper.
It disappeared?
That disappeared.
Wow.
So I went to the nurse's station
and
said, look, I want that piece of paper back that you've took out of the room. And I seen him looking through a pile of paperwork on the desk and he sort of pulled it from halfway.
So you got it back?
It wasn't even on the top.
Yeah.
It was like halfway in. He said, oh, we thought it was doctor's notes. And they gave it to it, which say we showed you.
Do you want to show it? You have it with you, do you?
Show it on the phone.
That's a picture of the notes.
That's what they gave your father.
Yeah.
And that states, just to be clear for the viewers, that states morphine and midazolam. In fact, could you read for us what is on that note from what you can decide?
The top. I'd actually asked the doctor when I first went in when I explained to him he was dehydrated. He wrote what are them?
So it's dexamethasone, which is 6 milligrams.
Hand him if you want to hand him the mic, that might be better if he's going to read it. Yeah. Just pull off the clip. That's it. Yeah.
So it's dexamethasone, which is 6 milligrams. That's twice a day, and then underneath it says stopped on the 17th of the 10th. Then it's saralimab, 400 milligrams, single dose, and then doxycycline, which is 100 milligrams once daily, and then that was stopped on the 19th of the 10th, 2021.
So you see that's different handwriting from that was the doctor initially when I'd first gone in.
Yeah.
And that was the nurse's handwriting.
Just the mic as well. Yeah.
That's the nurse's handwriting, which is the next.
Yeah.
Which is there.
And then the last one is morphine sulfate injections, 2.5 milligrams, and midazolam injection, 5 milligrams. Subcut.
So we've questioned this with Wiston Hospital, and there's discrepancies in what we can see and what's been signed out on midazolam, and they never really come up with a clear explanation. the doctor who was the lead consultant, I would say, that day, literally the week our complaint went in, has been struck off and gone to Qatar.
Really?
Yeah. And
so you can't even get any accountability.
Can't even explain to us why they've even contradicted themselves over that.
So if I were to tell you that the GP that was responsible for Derek Dimmock, the last GP to see him, was due to testify on the first day and claimed long-term sick leave with a psychiatrist's note, and sent instead his partner, who was also a GP, whose last day was the day of the testimony and who retired the very next day.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a similar pattern.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, the last meeting we had 2 or 3.
We've had like an informal one, then we had two.
Yeah, and then we were at stage 2, and they refused to meet us this last time. Refused to answer the question, which were all to do with morphine, Midazolam.
And you were both at the parliamentary hearing in the select committee room, and so since then you've been campaigning for I suppose for the truth on this story. Yeah. How are you feeling after hearing what you've heard at the inquest now?
Well, the thing is, it just brings back I mean, listening to what's going on with this case, the similarities. The one thing that I witnessed was a lack of just general care. I mean, there was no nurse would come in at all when they saying, well, they'd log when they come in. There was, from what I could see, there was none of that in relation to my father. But yeah, at one point, like I said, there was. I was trying to lift my dad up at one point, so he could breathe a bit better, but the bed was broke. And when I left the sheets back to sort of move him, he was covered in excrement. Oh. And the fans weren't working. They have a obviously try and.
Hey, which hospital was this?
Western Hospital. Do you remember? I did point out, because I didn't get really to speak at the when we went to Parliament, because it sort of went on a little bit.
Yeah.
But I did mention out of all the people that were at there that day, there was actually 3 cases from Worcester.
Yeah,
well,
3.
One duplicate from another hospital, but there was 3
from the same hospital.
Well, Worcester is the home of Liverpool Care Pathway.
Yeah. Worcester is the home of the Liverpool Care Pathway. Just explain to our viewers the significance of that. Which, by the way, that's now been admitted as evidence. It's going to be heard as evidence.
Well, Liverpool Care Pathway. I know that Andrew was on about the Proton NG163, which is sort of the rebranded Liverpool Care Pathway, and it's just quite odd now how.
And that the Liverpool Care Pathway was abolished.
Yes.
Why was it abolished?
Because they found that it was not a nice way to die, basically. Yeah,
it was an end-of-life care pathway that was leading to deaths.
Yes.
And the government abolished it. And you're saying that the current protocol, the NG163 protocol, is simply the same pathway that was abolished, rebranded.
Yeah, just rebranded. And I think Andrew pointed out on Monday, Andrew Bridgen, that out of all the nice guidelines that have existed, the only one that's disappeared from the NHS website is the Proton NG163.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah.
There's obviously some sort of cover up or.
Well, that's what we're here to. Yeah. That's what we're here to shed some light on, and we're hoping this inquest does that. How are you both feeling about the inquest?
I think it's going. I think polls positive.
Yeah.
We've read the transcripts this week, and it's swung. I wouldn't say it was. They're very good. They're very good at covering the tracks, and we know that from meetings. There's an absolute arrogance that they portray. It's just frustrating.
Yeah. Well, we better get back to the inquest because we're only in a lunch break and there's a danger we get locked out. And I'm conscious that you both probably want a snack as well. But thank you for taking the time to tell your story, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm really sorry to hear what happened to your father. We're hoping that from this inquest today at least, we get some form of movement on this so that other cases can come forward. But let's see how it goes. Of course, thank you both. And we're going to end now.